the Snowflake Sports Podcast. It is 7:30 Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, July 7th, and I am joined by a new guest who hosts the Out of Bounds podcast on Spotify and wherever you get your podcast, Joe McDonald. How are you doing? Joe?
I am doing fantastic. I want to say I'm so honored to be on the podcast. Of all the podcasts I've been introduced to in the past couple months, I have to say that yours is definitely in the rotation. I listen to every new episode. I've listened to old episodes. So I'm very honored and very thankful to be on your podcast tonight.
Thanks, greatly appreciated. And I love your podcast too. Trey and Caleb are hilarious. Even though Caleb has a lot of stupid Jason Tatum takes, but it's somewhat justified as a Celtics fan. But anyways, going through the agenda, what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about Joe's sports fandoms because they're kind of wild. Patrick Mahomes' 10-year mega deal. The Washington Deadskins will change their name. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said that no professional sports will be allowed to play or have fans in their stadiums. Indiana Pacers Victor Oladipo will not be traveling to Orlando, and with Maya Moore quitting her career to help social justice. So lots to cover. But yeah, Joe, why don't you just kind of go through your different sports teams fandoms?
All right. I hope you have an atlas prepared because I definitely cover all parts of the globe when it comes to my fandom. When it comes to baseball, I'm a diehard Seattle Mariners fan. I'm 38 years old, so that goes back to the early days of Ken Griffey Jr. and Randy Johnson and those teams in the 90s that were just so incredible and had so much talent, but unfortunately could never get past the damn Yankees. And so that, and I still follow them, guys like Ichiro. We don't talk about A-Rod playing there, but just been a fan for many years, 30 years pretty much, and just have always loved them. Moving to basketball, I'm an Indiana Pacers fan, and that goes back to Reggie Miller. I believe it or not, I actually heard of his sister Cheryl Miller before I heard of Reggie, and then I was like, wait a minute, she has a younger brother, and started following him, and of course when he was beating the Knicks in the 90s and competing with those Jordan-led Bulls, I just loved the way they played. And if you know anything about those teams, they were as tough as nails, tougher than the Knicks, despite what the New York fandoms want to tell you. And I just still follow them and love them. Fairly close to the Pacers. I'm a Detroit Red Wings fan. The Russian Five of the 90s, just all those teams. Sergei Fedorov was my favorite player. Steve Yzerman, Nick Lindstrom. I'm not going to bore you with all the names. Henrik Zetterberg, Pavel Datsyuk. See, I bored you with some more names. Just love them. I've loved them just from the moment I saw them. They just played hockey a different way than I'd ever seen. Sticking in your neck of the woods, I'm a New England Patriots fan, and you're going to say, oh no, another Tom Brady acolyte. That's fine. I actually go back to when Drew Bledsoe was drafted. I live in Western Pennsylvania. We didn't get Patriot games, but I was lucky enough to see Drew Bledsoe versus Dan Marino in a game in the mud, and I was hooked. I loved Bledsoe. I saw him in college once on a random West Coast game that was on, and I was like, I like this guy, and I followed the Patriots ever since. The reason I was never a big Brady stan is because my favorite college football team is the Ohio State Buckeyes, who are the hated rivals of the Michigan Wolverines. So when that dumb quarterback from Michigan came in for Bledsoe, I was not happy, but he was able to win me over with 6 titles. So, that happens.
Good trade-off,
I could stand him now, although I hate when he posts stuff about Michigan. I'm just like, I forget about that part. And then North Carolina basketball, and that's an easy one. Like, I watched guys like Rasheed Wallace and Vince Carter when they were in college. Loved those 90s teams and just kept following. It's a little bit harder to follow, although they are on national TV a lot, just with the one and done era and teams not staying together as long. But I still love my North Carolina Tar Heels. So that is all my big sports teams. I don't follow soccer really, although I will cheer in the World Cup for the U.S. if we ever make it back.
Right. We goddamn better make it back. So I just find it fascinating. So you're Western PA, like, time-wise, how close are you to Pittsburgh? Or
I am an hour and 15 minutes from Pittsburgh. I am dead center in the middle of Steeler country. So the fact that I'm a Patriots fan annoys people and gives me no greater satisfaction than to wear anything Patriots any time of the year to see the disgust in people's faces.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, they just owned them for so long. Like the entire 20-year run, it was like Steelers, Patriots, like in the AFC Championship. So it's just, I don't know. I feel like they would just
It's
get mad.
they get so mad, and I deliver food for a living, produce, and people on my route know that I'm a Patriots fan, and they actually boo me during the NFL season.
No, that's fine.
So
It's like, oh yeah, where's your team? How many
yeah,
Super Bowls in a row? So,
that's right.
but yeah, I just find it fascinating too, because like Rochester, from where I'm from in Western New York, it's like about the same time. I'd say like an hour away from Buffalo.
Hmm.
So like me growing up, I kind of had this hodgepodge fandoms too. So I kind of when I was like 8, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna pick all my favorite teams. And that was when Jordan was coming back. So I liked the Wizards because he was playing for the Wizards. And then just got stuck there with like Gilbert Arenas,
Oh, man.
and like Antoine Jameson and the whole like gun fiasco. Um,
Yep.
then I was a Penguins fan. So in your neck of the woods for hockey,
Oh,
just because of
okay.
like Mario Lemieux and Yager, uh, and then what was it? And then a Titans fan. That was just weird, just being like a Tennessee Titans fan. But I thought the most ironic thing too was like I thought the Music City Miracle was like the coolest thing ever. So I was like, okay, let me do that. And then it's of course it's against the Bills, and it's like
Of
the thing
course.
that causes so much like depression and sadness. And it's just like, yeah, that's my team now. And then what am I missing? Oh, baseball. I've always been a Blue Jays fan. I think it was like Roy Halladay and like Carlos Delgado back then. And I just kind of stuck with that. And then basically once I entered like college, I gained more respect for like Western New York. I was like, you know what? Let me just like consolidate everything and do Raptors, Blue Jays, and then Sabres, Bills. And that's what I've done ever since. But I just like when you're not in that city, I feel like it's so easy to just kind of do whatever. And I find that
Oh,
interesting. So,
absolutely. And
yeah.
I love that how old are you? I can't remember.
28, so we 10-year
Okay,
difference.
so I'm like when you say that you're a Blue Jays fan and you're like, yeah, Roy Halladay and Carlos Delgado and all this, and I'm thinking like, boy, I remember in the early '90s with like Robbie Alomar and all that
Oh,
when they
right.
were, that's what Joe Carter and all that, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, yep, that's the age difference, but
Yeah. That's true.
that's
Yeah.
good though. They were a really good team. I actually don't mind Toronto. They're a really good team.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially I feel like in baseball when you're not in the same division, you can respect other teams. Like
Except the
obviously,
Yankees, yes.
yeah, expect the Yankees. And I guess
Except
the
the Yankees.
Astros now. Everyone just hates the Astros.
Oh God,
Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, moving on because we got too much to talk about. But Patrick Mahomes, 10 years, $450 million. Like that's my God, that is a lot of money, a lot of time. So Joe, what do you think? What do you think about this deal?
I think that on paper it catches headlines. I think you see 10 years, $503 million. It's a 12-year deal with the 2 years at the end of his rookie contract now. I really think all in all it's a 6-year deal. It's the next 2 years and then the first 4. There's really interesting stuff. I think it's 113 pages is the contract, which is I
What?
followed that. Yeah, yeah, I know. Last night I was reading through stuff and agents and everybody like I've never seen a contract with so much language. There was accelerators, performance accelerators, and all this other stuff. I mean, it's not dumb for the Chiefs. Even if they were to somehow pay out all $503 million, he is the premier quarterback in the NFL. He is obviously a team leader. He is somebody that you can depend on in the good times and in the times where you doubt. They were down 10 points, double digits in the Super Bowl, and they won. They were down double digits in the AFC Championship game, and they won. And they were down double digit points in the divisional round, and they won. There's only so many quarterbacks that do that. And presumably he's only going to get better or stay the same. So one MVP and one Super Bowl title, I think the Chiefs are going to be happy with that going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really a win-win for both sides because like that's just Patrick Mahomes. That's so much money like that. He doesn't really know what he's gonna do with. Like I think I heard Adam Schefter say that it's like his grandkids are set or something like ridiculous down the line. And I don't think he seems pretty down to earth, so I feel like he doesn't need like this money. And then anyway, so like the Chiefs locked down their franchise quarterback, and they're pretty much set in the future for this guy to lead you to, I don't know, maybe definitely a couple more Super Bowl appearances at least, probably another 2 rings. I'm just kind of guessing.
That
Maybe
that
3. Like a
that
two
sounds
two
like
and a
a good
half.
over and under.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and so the thing is, like, the NFL is about to renew their contracts with like their TV contracts. So like 45 million a year for a quarterback might be not as large like 5 or 6 years in the road or down the road. So like they almost nag him or snag him at a deal if like people are paying, I don't know, like Deshaun Watson like that kind of money, or maybe even like Lamar Jackson. Though like Lamar Jackson probably won't get guaranteed contract for
Hmm.
like 10 years just because of the way he plays. Um, but like
Well,
it might not be as much as it was, you know.
there's another part too that you were talking about when you talked about the TV deals coming up. There's something else coming down the line, and it's gambling revenue. Stadiums are going to turn into mini casinos. They are going to tie in with gambling websites. There will be on-site betting. There will be in-game betting, and that is also they're going to find a way to do it. It's going to start in New Jersey and Vegas and all that. They're going to find a way to also bring in gambling money, which will also increase the salary cap. The owners will want that because even though the players will get paid more, they will also make more. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Now, the TV deals you can kind of project out. You know, there's really smart people on Twitter, much smarter than I am, who will tell you probably what they're going to get. The gambling money, we're not sure, but the safe assessment is figure on at least a $5 to $10 million increase from gambling revenue once it actually hits, which that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you put that on top of the normal growth of the salary cap, that's huge. And it could be even bigger.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, yeah, the TV deal is going to be, I assume, a lot more than that. And when you factor, maybe it's like 20 million more per year or something. If you just double
Yeah,
the height of that. But like, so right,
absolutely.
you get 30 million more a year. That's like a couple players that you could fill out, like a couple good players too. Um,
Mhm.
so and like I don't know. So what if they have to lose like Chris Jones or like Tyrann Mathieu or like players like that? Like quarterback is the most important position. Like being a Bills fan and not having a quarterback has been so frustrating for so long. So it's just
But
like when you know you have it, lock it down. So
no, you're right. Now, can I tell you something real quick before we move off Mahomes? You
yeah.
said about letting a guy like Chris Jones leave. Do you know what Patrick Mahomes' cap numbers are the next 2 years, including 2020?
I can look it up. I won't look it back, but
It's
uh,
it's it's $5.5 million this year, and next year it's a tad under 25 million. That's
that's not
insane.
that's not
So
bad.
if you want to sign Chris Jones and front load his contract, if you think that he's that player and you want to try and make him the first $20 million guy or whatever you want to do, they do have flexibility before this extension goes in. So I mean, I agree with you. The Chiefs, it's a win-win for both sides. But if Mahomes wants to compete for Super Bowls, which it sounds like that's definitely his main goal is to compete for Super Bowls, he definitely helped out the Kansas City Chiefs at least for the next 2 years.
Oh, for sure. That's a good point though. That it's like it's really they have Mahomes for 12 years, right? Like I keep forgetting that too.
Yeah.
Um, and it's when you have him for 5.5 right now, like you can front load those salaries of those veterans, and then like when you get to
Hmm.
the draft, then you can kind of draft those players back, um, like they did. And I forgot who they even got this year. I think it was like a running back, right? Like some speedy
Yeah. They
running back.
took the kid out of LSU.
Right,
Uh,
right. Okay.
I can't think of his name. Yeah, it's escaping
Yeah.
me. I'm old. Give me a break. Uh,
Yeah, whatever. It happens.
yeah.
Anyways, so Washington Deadskins, that was kind of the big news. I think it came out Friday. They're thinking
Yeah.
about actually changing their name. Um, Dan Snyder was adamant years ago that they would not change their name, so this is definitely some progress, at least in the DC world. Um, so do you think he will actively change the name, or is this just a publicity stunt?
I think if you would have asked me on Friday, I would have told you there's an 80-20 chance that it was changed. Just the 20% chance just because it's Dan Snyder. It really all started with the shareholders of a lot of big influential companies saying that they wanted the Washington Redskins, the Washington football franchise, to change their name. And then Nike pulled stuff off their online site, and they said they will no longer sell apparel. That was the nail in the coffin. FedEx, who paid $200 million to put their name on the field, said, hey, we'd kind of like it if you changed the name. But like I said, when Nike pulled that stuff, so if you go search for Washington football team stuff, you won't find anything. It's changing now. I mean, it's 100% changing. And then you had 3 minority owners who said that they want to sell their shares in the team because basically they don't like Snyder and they don't want to be associated with him, because I'm sure there is a belief that he's going to be stubborn and not change the name. What do you think the chances are?
Yeah, so I think, especially with that Nike story coming out where they're not going to sell like apparel, that's huge. Like, that's pretty much where, I mean, outside of like people actually going to games, that's where you get like all the revenue, plus like TV deals and whatnot. But so what I don't get though is like, why is it so hard to change the name and change the apparel? Because it's like you could make so much money if you just change it. And like DC is a pretty progressive city, I'm imagining. Like I think it like voted like 96% Clinton, 4% Trump or whatever. So it's just like, and they had like huge protests for all the Black Lives Matter stuff. So it's just like, I don't think like, or Deadskins fans will be like, yeah, let me wear the old stuff, like, with the face of the Native American and everything. So it's just like, they're all gonna buy the new stuff. You're gonna make a ton of more money, and it's like for a good cause. Like I don't know where Dan Snyder is thinking, but this is Dan Snyder. He has no soul. Like the whole Trent Williams thing, how he walked for, how badly he treated a cancerous growth on his head, like that. I have no sympathy, but it just has to change. Like I feel like people revolt, but
yeah, it does. You're absolutely right. I actually forgot about that Trent Williams story, but as soon as you said it, if anybody listening does not know that story, please go look it up, because I mean, I understand it's a business, but sometimes, geez, oh man, you gotta have a heart. Dan Snyder is, like a lot of people, especially people in political office right now who live in the DC area, they are rich, powerful white men who think that they don't have to answer for things. And there's a difference between woke culture and doing what's right. Like, I don't think, if you really look, there is nobody who should think that having a team name called the Redskins is not about disrespect. It is. Plain and simple. Like you said, you look at that logo and you say it, and then you're like, well, yeah, there were Native Americans living in that area, but they weren't called Reds. That's not a tribe. That's a derogatory term talking about Native Americans. So you could, like you said, and we talked about this the other night on our pod, you could be not necessarily the hero, but you don't have to be the villain. Like you said, buy back whatever apparel is out there, eat the cost of $50 million or $100 million, put all new stuff out, and guess what? You're going to get all these people buying stuff. So yeah, you're going to lose some money up front, but you're definitely getting it in the back end. And the goodwill is something that the Washington franchise definitely needs, because their fans, oof, man, they are some of the most depressed fans I've ever met.
Yeah. I think like last year was finally the year where they just kind of gave up, and you could see like tickets being like $10, which I feel like you only see like Cleveland games for that when they were that bad. So they're deprived, and like outside of the Nationals, I don't think, like, because the Wizards haven't been good. I guess the Capitals, never mind. So it's an okay sports city, but
it is. But I mean, in all honesty, unless you are a diehard fan, most people don't think of the hockey team. Like, if you're a city that has 3 or 4 major sports and your hockey team is the best thing about it, you're probably not going to be thought of highly in the national conversation. Fair or unfair, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so what names do you suggest Washington to consider?
There's been a lot of talk online. They've done polls. I unfortunately read Adam Schefter's comments, or not his comments, but I went into the comment section of his post when saying what name, and let's just say you had to go through a lot of bad names before you got to anything of substance. A couple that have jumped out to me. I kind of like the Vipers just because there's not really any teams in the NFL that use snakes or serpents or anything like that, and I think you could do some cool logos with it. I kind of like the Knights, with the K, and the Mammoths. I know those aren't the most original names, but I think they fit well. I also wouldn't mind seeing them instead of Washington. They could even go by DC, like if you're the DC Vipers or the DC Knights. I think there's something kind of newer to it as opposed to Washington. Not that Washington's bad. No offense to anybody if they're from Washington. Something else thrown out there is the DMV. If you're not familiar, that's the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, just because everything is so consolidated in there. So you could even do like the DMV Vipers, which I don't think is going to happen because too many people will make terrible, waiting for your license jokes and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
but those are my three that I kind of like. What do you like, Dan? Is there anything that's jumped out to you? The one that I've seen the most is the Red Tails because it talks about the military service and stuff, and then supposedly it also has some respect for Native Americans, which I don't think you need to replace a racial slur with like going the other way. Like you can just kind of leave the Native Americans out of this. I think they'll be okay with that.
Yeah, for sure. So the one thing I don't want them to do, so like growing up in Rochester, New York, there's a lot of Syracuse fans, and both my parents went to Syracuse, and I think this was happening when they were there. But they used to be called like the Saltine Warriors or something that was like
Oh
about
wow.
the Native Americans that were living in Onondaga County. And like that was pretty bad. So the tribes like there were bad and was like, okay, you have to change the name. And they went, okay, we're going to be the Orange Men. And it's like, okay, can't really do that. That's pretty racist. That's pretty similar to like the Redskin name. Um, so
And
then,
is that what that means?
yeah, yeah, because they
I'm
went from Salty Warrior to Orange Men, and they were basically like, fine, screw you guys. We're just gonna be called the Orange, and we're gonna be like an orange like fruit.
oh,
And it's
I'm
just
literally finding this out. I had no idea that had any like racial connotation at all.
Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah, it's very
stunned.
subtle. Especially because this is like 40 years now. It was like mid
Oh,
80s or so. So it's like, pretty bad. So like, what I don't want them to do is like be like, oh, we're the Reds now, or like the Apples or something, and just be like an apple or fruit. That's like if they don't do that, I'm fine with anything else. But so
apple.
like personally, I just miss the Charlotte Bobcats name, and just like the little like Bobcat thing. So I want like and I
That's
agree because we've been talking about this like offline. I love the whole like the thought of just do DC or DMV, um, just because like I feel like casual fans don't understand like this is not Washington State, it's actually DC, and you're like,
yeah,
oh yeah. So
yeah.
but yeah, so if they could, and then also if they could steal the DC Defenders game name, that would be cool from the XFL.
That's
Um,
that was nice. I wanted to say Defenders, but I was like, so many people have said that, so I was trying to
yeah.
come up with like different ones. But I do like the DC Defenders, although if that defense isn't any good, that's just going to open up online trolls forever. So
That's true, but like they've been there, or trolls against the Deadskins have been there forever, or at
true.
least 10 years. So they could take the heat. And then there was the Zach Lowe tweet that had the Washington Swamp Dragons, which is I don't know, I just thought was hilarious. Um,
You're
and
the
then I
second
don't know,
person who's brought that up to me. I can't.
yeah, yeah. And then just to get weird, because you had the mammoths, mythical creatures, so call them the Washington Centaurs. Get some little four-legged creatures, some like spears or stuff. I don't know. Let's get weird with it.
Why
Um,
not? I mean,
yeah,
if you're gonna go, like, just go,
yeah,
go all the way.
yeah, definitely. I really like the DC Vipers though. I think that, like you said, like with the snake, and it just like flows really well. I
hmm
just think they could really take that and run with it. Um,
I would actually be on pins and needles to see what logo designs they would have because their alternate jerseys and stuff, their helmets could be incredible. Like
yeah.
they really could. Although it is Dan Snyder, so he's probably going to go out to the cheapest bidder and be terrible. But
Yeah, some like 8-year-old who's like, I just learned Photoshop. So
That's me. Just so you know, that's me.
yeah. Yeah, so moving on along, so New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo said that no professional sports would be allowed to have fans in stadiums. And this is pretty much just targeted at Buffalo Bills fans, and who were pretty angry about it. And like I kind of get it, but I'm also just like, why? Like we're in a pandemic right now. Like you shouldn't be gathering. I know gathering outside is supposedly okay, but you still don't really know that. But anyway, so what are your thoughts on governors basically overruling professional sports leagues?
Can I ask you? So what happened on Buffalo Bills Twitter?
So
I
basically, this rule came out, and like Bill's Twitter was kind of like, oh, like you can't stop like Bills fans. We're still gonna tailgate, blah blah blah. I'm really mad about Cuomo doing this. Like Buffalo's not that bad. It's all New York City, and it's like a lot of New York too is like it's basically two different states. It's New York City and then like everyone else. So especially Buffalo being 7 hours away, they think that they're kind of almost on an island, at least compared to like coronavirus compared to New York City. And there's a lot of people that think Cuomo is more downstate, which I kind of agree with. And but like, don't be that mad. Like, just watch the games at home. Like, we're in a pandemic. We're trying to get the numbers lower, I think, but we just got bored. I know it sucks, but yeah. So like the thing about Twitter too is I can't tell if people are serious or not. um, so
yeah.
it sounded like they were because I saw enough of it where I was like, okay. But I don't know. It lasted like 2 days and then kind of went away.
That kind of went away.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you clarified that because I've never understood the whole like this team Twitter, like, Wizards
Oh.
Twitter or Blue Jays Twitter. I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like, I've been using Twitter for a while now, but I'm not part of the club. I don't get it.
Uh,
Uh, so listen, governors in all states right now are in tough positions. I brought up a point when you talked about us talking on offline. Minor League Baseball canceled their whole season. Those bring in a lot of revenue for smaller towns throughout the United States, and a lot of people go for a cheap way to see athletes up front. The governors weren't asked about that. That happened for Major League Baseball, but governors have to be careful because fans, whether we want to admit it or not, fan is short for fanatic, and we do overstep at times. We say, it's our body, it's our choice, we should be able to go. If I want to pay $200 for a ticket, you should let me in. Virus be damned. I I understand governors doing what is best or what they believe is best for the citizens of the state, because usually as people we're pretty stupid. I think you can kind of find news clips about that recently, people partying and going in bars and everywhere else. And then, big surprise, we have a continuation of the first wave. So if I were to question the governor, in yours, or Cuomo, like you were saying in New York, my question would be to him, why is it that professional teams are thinking they can do whatever they want when the smaller teams, whether it's high school sports, college sports, things of that sort, minor league baseball, are told what to do? Is it just it's because they're the big guys and they get to do whatever they want? Or is it something else? I mean, what do you think on it?
Yeah, I think it's tough, especially like I feel like with minor league baseball, there's a team in every city, or like you could drive like 30 minutes and you could find a minor league team. It's pretty incredible how that network is, and especially a big country as the United States. So like,
Yeah.
I feel like if there's ways you can bring it back, like if you do like okay, like every other row and you can sit up to like four people, maybe six, I don't really know the exact number it would be, and then like spread out from that. I think there's a way to do it. I think baseball, right, too, is like one of the easiest ways. And like baseball, football, like outdoor sports, because supposedly, right, you if you wear a mask and you don't like touch anything, it's like safer. And like I feel like they have to have hand sanitizers like in the cup holders or something.
Oh yeah, I
So
said no
like
alcohol sales.
yeah,
No, I
exactly.
mean, if you do want to do this, like if they're gonna try this, you need to not sell alcohol at the stadiums because when people get a few drinks in them, they don't want to listen, and everything goes out the window.
Yeah, yeah. The only concern that I really have is because like when you go to like a sporting event, people will scream, people will yell, blah blah blah. Uh, they might like, because I see people all the time walking around. Because I've been more adventurous and being like outside and stuff. It's just like people aren't really wearing their masks properly, or like it doesn't cover their nose. And I saw this one dude. He lifted it like above only to cover his nose and not his mouth, which I was like, what are you doing? Like that is worse than the other way. And I was just like, I was baffled because that was the first time I saw that. But like I think like fans will just not care. You'll be spitting, you'll be hollering, like it could get serious. But like I don't know. I really like your point though with like the minor league teams or like high school sports, like college sports. Like it's not as rabid, I guess. Or I guess college could totally be.
Well,
That's not really
especially
the
in the
point.
South. No, I know what you
Yeah.
mean though. It is different. Usually when you go to a college game, it's more of a joyous occasion, whereas if you go to a professional game, it can be very antagonistic.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Especially if you're depending on how good the team is,
Yeah.
and the reputation they have. Uh, but I don't know. I still think like sports is almost like a reward, or it's like it's still a non-essential business. So if like a governor, mayor, council person wants to kind of squash this whole thing, especially if it's as bad as it is right now, like in fall, um, I have no problem with them denying it. Uh, it's just you got to deny all of them. Then you can't just let like football have it, like the NFL have it, but not like minor leagues have it. Um,
Yeah.
so
No, I
uh,
I I, I completely agree.
yeah, yeah. So irregardless of money, would you go to a game now?
I really thought about this because when you sent me the outline for this, this question more than any of them really made me think because I've been keeping up with everything going on with COVID since December when I first read something about it in China and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'll have to keep an eye on that. And then I ended up telling our pediatrician about it in like February. I'm like, you might want to keep an eye on this. And she's like, I've never even heard of this. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of a problem. I have three small children. I do have one who had serious medical problems. He almost died from strep throat. So we've been
Oh,
very
geez.
careful. Yeah, it's a crazy story. I'll have to tell you about it sometime, but, we were really lucky to have Children's Hospital close. So, but anyway, so we've been really careful with all of them. My kids are 9, 7, and 6. I'm married and, my wife, and then I have a stepson who lives with me too. So, irregardless of money, would I go to a game? I would love to say no. Would I myself go? I would. And I would wrap myself up in cellophane if I had to. But I would not go with my family. And when I was done, I would burn my clothes. I would get a shower for an hour. I would do everything that I had to do to make sure my family was safe. But as a sports fan, if I were to tell you that, if you message me and say, hey, Joe, I got tickets to the Bills Patriots game on November 1st and they're letting us in, I'm driving to Buffalo. I'm driving to Orchard Park. Like, I'm sorry, I'm doing it. Um, I'll deal with the consequences after. And that is a very selfish answer. And I apologize, but I think I hope that that's the struggle a lot of people have. I don't want to put anybody in danger, including my family. But if given the chance, I would have to say, like you said, the outdoor would definitely sell it. I would not go to a dome. I would not go to a hockey game or a basketball game. I would feel a little bit safer being outdoors, but I would definitely be wary of doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I think having like a family and kids kind of gives you like a different perspective. Um,
Oh, absolutely.
so I don't know, because it's just like I think I have the same trouble as you have, even though I personally don't have kids. Where it's just like I really want to go because it'll be like a fun time. I could like see friends or like other people can come and stuff. But it's just like
Mhm.
I don't have to do that. Like it's still enjoyable just to watch on your own, like on your TV, and then you got your phone, you're checking Twitter, Facebook, whatever social
Yep.
media you got, and just like I don't know, you could have like a friend over and just like talk the shit for, the 3 hours or so. Um, but like I like your point where it's like if someone gives me a ticket, I'm probably going. Or if it's like they bought a ticket for me and it's, not a lot of money and I like can pay the back, like it's like yes. But yeah, outdoors definitely. I don't think I'll go to a basketball game for until there's a vaccine or I don't even know how long in the
Yeah.
future. Um, but
Probably
yeah, it's
when you have
hard.
kids. It'll probably
Yeah,
be
yeah,
until you have kids.
yeah, exactly. But it's so difficult because it's just like you want to, but you know it's stupid.
It
Um,
is.
yeah,
The first time that you turn on the TV and you see fans in a stadium, a part of you is going to go idiots, and then a small part of you is going to be like, man, I wish I was there.
right.
Like
Yeah,
it's going to happen.
yeah,
You're even if you don't tell anybody, you're just going to be like, that'd be pretty awesome.
yeah. Definitely, I agree. So speaking of your Indiana Pacers, they had their superstar Victor Oladipo will not be traveling to Orlando to play in the restart, joining Malcolm Brogdon. So basically, I don't know. I think you guys are kind of done, a little screwed. But yeah. So as a Pacers fan, what are your thoughts on this development?
Well, as of right now, Brogdon has said, even though he did test positive for COVID-19, he said that he will be playing.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and Oladipo will be traveling with the team. He will not be playing, which I can't tell if that's a good or a bad thing. I mean, it's always good. He's been really supportive. If you watched it all this season, the few national television games they were on, he was the biggest cheerleader on the sideline, even helping guys up and stuff. He's a great teammate. I'm, I'm, dude, I'm disappointed. I really, really, really was looking forward to this Pacers team, with Brogdon and Oladipo because I think they are perfect complements to each other in the backcourt. And I'm a big Domantas Sabonis fan. I love Sabonis and the way he came on this year and made it to the All-Star game and Miles Turner and just the depth of the team. I thought they really had a chance. I don't know what making noise means, if it's getting to the conference finals, if it's, getting to the second round. They've been a first round exit here the last couple of years. Bad luck with injuries, bad luck with teams they've went up against, but it sucks. I mean, he injured his quad. He tore his quad, which is a serious injury, especially for a guy who's super athletic. That can't be easy coming back from. So I'm not going to crush him like that. If it's not my body. I can't tell him how he feels or what he wants to do. He said he tried to ramp it up and he just doesn't feel comfortable going down. So I respect his decision, but it sucks. I mean, I'm sorry, I can't be more eloquent. It sucks. It really does. Um,
Yeah,
I was really looking forward to this team.
yeah. I mean, like the growth of Sabonis this year is kind of wild. Like he's starting like every game. He's got notched his first All Star. I don't know, he's pretty much just improving across the statistical board. And then like you said, like Brogdon, I feel like is much more of a passer, and
Hmm.
Oladipo is more like an on-ball kind of player. And I feel like that just meshes so well. And like I feel like they could have easily got out of the first round finally, because I think they're what the fourth seed, right?
Them and Philly are 4-5 right now, so
Right.
I think Philly's 4 and Indiana's 5, but they're like,
Uh,
I think it's half a game separates them. So the 8 games were actually really important to try and whether you're going to move up to 3 or 4 or fall down. So again, it just sucks, man. It sucks.
yeah, absolutely.
And
Because
and Sabonis has great genes. If you're not old enough, for anybody who listens, go watch old footage of Arvydas Sabonis. Don't watch old Arvydas Sabonis when he played in Portland and had bad knees and was fat. This guy was a unicorn before unicorns existed. He's maybe one of the 10 greatest players of all time if he actually came and played in the NBA when he was young. He was incredible. Go watch his YouTube clips.
I'll have to check him out because I honestly thought he only played for Portland. What
Oh
team do you play for
God,
before? Or was it
he
overseas?
played. Oh yeah, he played in Serbia, and
Okay.
this was at a time of the USSR, and that Serbian team was so good they beat the U.S. team, the basketball team, when I think it was the '84 the '88 Olympics. I think it was the '88 Olympics. They beat them. Sabonis was a guy. He had a mean streak in him. He could actually hit 3-pointers, and he was a nasty defender. You were not going to bully him around. I mean, think of I mean, the best version of Kristaps Porzingis, but bigger, like
Right.
thicker. I mean, I'm serious. Like, look him up. He was amazing. He was a gifted passer. Even when he went to Portland, he still had the passing gene, just great touch on the ball. But man, if he would have come over when he was younger, the NBA was in trouble.
Oh yeah. I know he's definitely one of the first major European players to come over.
Hmm
Totally forgot that he played in Serbia for as long as he did and then came over.
Yeah.
I thought it was
And
more
then
immediate.
his knees were terrible because I mean, you play overseas and it's not like they took care of themselves back then and they played on terrible courts.
Yeah.
So broke down.
Yeah.
But man, yeah, go watch his clips. He's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to the Pacers, I guess like it doesn't really matter their seeding though. Like as long as they stay, because they're all in Orlando. There's no really home games, so it's like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if they're 4 or 5. It does matter if they drop to 6 and have to play the Celtics first, or like if they get the 3 seed and I don't even who the Heat are they sixth? I guess I haven't looked at the series in front of
Yeah,
me.
I think right now they're 6, but they're one of those teams trying to move up to 4 or 5. No,
Right,
you're
and
right. I mean, go
I
ahead.
wouldn't
Sorry.
want to play the Heat though. Like I would want to avoid them at all costs. Like I'd rather play the Sixers and then maybe get wrecked by the Bucks. But like I think the Pacers can somewhat run with them. Maybe go 6. I don't know. They went 7 with the Cavs like 4 years ago or
Yeah.
whenever that was. So
You're right.
and I
They
know
got
this is
swept by Boston last year, but I actually kind of like the Pacers versus the Heat. I think that the Heat would have a hard time if Oladipo was playing of handling that backcourt, and then when you have Turner and Sabonis down low, that could be tough for them. But it is a good matchup. I,
that's
I
true.
I agree that it's not a walkover by any means, but I think that'd be a good fun matchup. But
That
not now.
series too would be so slow.
Oh
Like,
my god.
'cause I forget the Pacers coach. I know it's like Nate McMillan or McMillian.
McMillan.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Like his pace is so slow. I know the Heat just love to play defense, and they could
Yep.
totally play slow. So it's just like those games would be like in the 80s. It would be so weird just to watch. But
87, 83.
yeah. So of course this is leading to all the white noise of Victor Oladipo wanting to leave Indiana. I guess, do you think he's going to leave? And if so, what team do you think he will go to?
Well, Oladipo has one more year left on his contract at $21 million next year. So they're in kind of the Paul George territory. If he's not going to sign an extension and they think he's going to walk, do you trade him? I think he wants to be part of a quote unquote super team. Ideally, that's what a lot of top players are doing now. He's going to be 28, so he wants that one big contract again, and he wants to be part of a winner. I don't think he's sold on Indiana as a top competitor, even though, like I said, I think him and Brogdon make a lot of sense. That was a really good trade for Indiana. Well, basically an offer sheet when they gave up the first round pick for him. Him with Sabonis and all that. But I don't think Victor wants to be there. And there is something weird because, and I don't know how much I buy into it, but Paul George made a comment, I think it was 2 weeks ago, that the Pacers had a chance to get, quote, the best power forward in the league and didn't. And that was part of the reason he wanted to leave. I'm not sure who he was talking about. I have an idea, but I just think there's something, and I love my Pacers, don't get me wrong, but there is something that players, they like being there in the team atmosphere, but there's something that the quote-unquote superstars just don't buy into, and I'm not really sure what that is. So I do think he will be gone. I think if they don't get any inclination that he's willing to sign the max contract extension, that they will try and ship him somewhere.
Yeah. So where do you think they'll trade him to if that comes to it?
The three teams that I keep thinking, whether he gets traded there or if they hold on to him and he goes in free agency, one we talked about, the Miami Heat. I think he'd like to team up with Jimmy Butler and see if they could bring somebody else down there. There are rumors that the Heat are trying to go after both Giannis and Oladipo when they become free agents. That's actually terrifying to think of. I'm not a huge Jimmy Butler fan, but Butler, Giannis, and Oladipo is one hell of a trio. Another team I think kind of makes sense is Dallas. I think if you get another guard who can take some of the scoring pressure off Luka, and then obviously Porzingis is, if he ends up being anything close to what people think he can be, is part of a big three. I kind of like Luka next to Victor because, Oladipo, if he comes back from the injury, he can rebound really well. He's definitely a guy who goes and gets buckets, but he also can facilitate. He can pass the ball. So they can take their turns. It kind of reminds me in some ways of like a LeBron Wade type thing. Not saying that either guy is to that level, but just the way that they play together. I think that makes a lot of sense. And the other team that I don't even know how this works. I could see him going and teaming up with Karl Anthony Towns in Minnesota. I think personality.
Okay.
I think personality-wise, they fit really well. And if they're trying to build something up there, because I don't think Towns has any desire to go anywhere. As crazy as that whole regime has been, and the chamber of unders dying, and just everything, it doesn't seem like Towns wants to leave. They've tried to make moves. They've tried to get guys there. But I could see Oladipo in Minnesota and trying to lure somebody else to go with him and Towns, or Towns trying to lure somebody. Do you like any of those? Do you see a better fit?
I'd say 2 out of the 3. I don't know why you would, why would you even need to, would win? Wouldn't that be the point?
I agree.
His contract just started. I don't really get the whole, is he gonna request for a trade? But I don't know. Anthony Davis did 18 months before his contract was up, so I guess anything is possible. But I really like Miami. I think that could work. I didn't even think of Giannis, but because Giannis, Jimmy Butler, and Oladipo, they fit everything you want. You have the clutch shooter in Jimmy Butler, who's great two-way defender. You have Oladipo that could bring the ball up or play off ball too if he wants to, and then Giannis, who just does pretty much everything else. So it's ooh.
And as the NBA goes to a more positionless kind of, and they've been doing it for a while. I mean, you can play Giannis at the 5. Yeah. Oladipo can be a point guard in one half, and then the off-ball guy in the next half. I mean, it opens so much for that team. So again, I don't think Giannis is going to Miami, but I also didn't think LeBron was going to Miami. So don't ask me about my basketball takes. But I definitely think Miami makes sense, and Pat Riley and them are always going to push the chips in the middle if they think they can get a superstar. And if they believe that Oladipo is a superstar, they'll trade if they have to, or they'll wait it out. And I definitely think they're putting the push on Giannis, and I have no idea what's going to happen with him. That's a whole other pod.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like that's going to be once this year's over, that all of that rumors are going to break out, and everyone's going to be like, where's Giannis going? Is he staying? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I think that's very dependent on this year. If the Bucks just win the title or something, I think he stays. Or next year, maybe they do well, maybe he stays. But I don't know. Everything you hear from his camp is he loves Milwaukee. That's his favorite city. He's not buddy with all these NBA players. But I don't know. That's a tangent. So what was crazy, was crazy about Miami though was I thought they had all these contracts that didn't allow it. They always had these $10 to $15 million players, and they just didn't have the money to get 2 max players. But I looked it up today on SpotTrack, and the Solomon Hill, they have the Solomon Hill contract for some reason. That'll be gone. Goran Dragic is $28 million off. He'll be gone. Well, I guess he wouldn't be gone. But if like you're gonna get Oladipo, of course you have Oladipo over
Oh yeah.
Dragic.
Yeah.
Um,
See you,
and then
Goran.
like yeah, and then so Myers Leonard I think is at 16 million. He's definitely you could get him for lower than that. Um, so you could definitely make it work. And then also Dallas, that's a great idea too, because like Luka, the only bad thing about it is like you have Luka touch the ball less, but like he's such a good passer that like you could leave Oladipo, and Oladipo's like a great passer too. So it's like it could work so well, and they could space the floor, and you got Porzingis. That could be like a almost like a Nuggets kind of like like hot potato kind of thing.
It,
Um,
it really, it almost reminds me of, and I don't know if you're old enough to remember, like the old Run TMC teams, with Tim
uh,
Hardaway and Chris Mullin and stuff like that, where in a weird way, it's like a 7 seconds or less on steroids type thing, where literally anybody can touch the ball and anybody can score. I mean, I agree you do take the ball out of Luka's hands some, but if he improves his 3-point shooting, yeah, put Luka in the corner from time to time, let Oladipo drive and kick it out to him, and you could end up having like two 25-point scorers.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it's
definitely.
it's scary. It's actually scary to think of if everybody plays together well.
Yeah, for sure. But then I just I keep coming back to it where it's like, why don't you want to play with Brogdon and Sabonis? Like it's there, it's set. You can make as much money as you want. This is your home team, so you can make all that extra money for
Hmm.
staying like in your own city. But like I also think this might be like he doesn't want to stay in Indianapolis. Like
Yeah.
Miami's probably a better city for like a younger mid 20s kind of guy. Like Dallas too. So it's just I don't know how that factors in. Plus like the zero income tax, like for state income tax in Florida. Like I feel like that's a factor too.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess Texas too. I'm totally blanked on that. But I don't know. It's just it seems so weird that someone would be that frustrated.
I, I wholly agree with you. I mean, ideally, I would love if he re-upped with Indiana and they really tried to build something there, because they did sign Brogdon. Sabonis signed a deal. Turner's there, but there's always talk of him being moved for another piece. I would love it if next year he came back. He said, listen, I want to be part of the team. Not like Kyrie Irving part of the team, but like actually part of the team and want to stay there and sign the super max and really try to compete in the East. But if I had to put a percentage on it, I think it's 75% he wants out, 25% he stays. That's just
Yeah,
my feeling as a Pacers fan from afar.
yeah, I would agree. I think he's pretty much out. Um, it doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. I'm not him. He might have other
Yeah.
like wants and needs. Um, all right, and moving on to Maya Moore. So she quit during the height of her career, which I totally forgot last year that she just like dropped out. But anyway, so she went to help a childhood friend that was sentenced for 50 years in prison for armed robbery and burglary, and not allowed a chance for parole till 20. Uh, and I thought this was pretty under the radar. I could be totally wrong. When she decided not to play in 2019 to pursue social justice. Obviously, I just think this is because men typically follow like male sports and don't watch women's sports. So, how do you think we can kind of fix this?
Before I answer that, I want to remind people that Maya Moore is in the possibly top 10 female players of all time, including college and pro careers. She's a 4-time WNBA champion. She won the Finals MVP once. She's been the most valuable player in the league once. She was the Rookie of the Year. I mean, she's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, 2-time FIBA world champion. There is very few players in the history of women's basketball that have the career that Maya Moore has had. And like you said, for her to step away in her prime, I mean, this is like if Steph Curry stepped away. I mean, that's how impressive she is. And people are like, oh, that's a little overblown. It's really not. If a player like Stephen Curry stepped away to do this, it would be the number one story on USA Today, Sports Illustrated, and one of a billion other publications, rightfully so. And unfortunately, it wasn't with Maya Moore. I'm with you. I remember when it happened. It wasn't a huge story. I'm not going to pretend to be like a Maya Moore fan. There are some college players that I see and I like. I'm like, oh, cool. Like I remember her at UConn. She was really good, and she went to Minnesota and played with the Lynx. It has gained traction if you watch any of the ESPN shows around the horn. People like Sarah Spain and Mina Kimes have been talking about this, so they have definitely given it attention, rightfully so. But what you said is 100% correct. Men, for the most part, follow sports that other men play. And even if women play the sports, we don't watch them for the most part outside of the Olympics. We love watching the gymnastics teams. We love watching, women's basketball or women's soccer in the Olympics or the World Cup, and we cheer and we root, and then we forget about it for 4 years. Which those are different sports. You can't really follow gymnastics all the time unless you're really into gymnastics. But we need to admit our biases is number one. Like, as men, as sports fans, we need to admit that, like, they are just as talented and they are just as incredible at what they do as the people we root for. Like, we need to get that out on the table. And I cannot recommend any video more than watching any female athlete take on quote unquote regular Joes and making them look stupid. The guys who are keyboard warriors online and say, oh yeah, I could score a bucket on Brittany Griner, or oh, I could return a serve from Serena Williams, and they go out and they look stupid. You will never look as stupid in your life as you will going up against a female professional athlete, because they are professionals for a reason. So we need to get over and call it toxic masculinity or whatever you want to call it, but we need to get over that, and we need to appreciate what these women do. I'm not saying if you follow the NBA that you have to follow the WNBA, but at least admit that they're really good and that you probably should watch them as an alternative because it's fun. It's really fun. We just don't give women credit for being physical. It's somehow, I don't know if it's a turnoff or an intimidation factor or whatever it is, but that's part of it. I'm sorry, it is. I'll let you jump in here before I go any further. What do you think?
Yeah, so I feel like one of the biggest things we could do to try to fix it, and I'm a totally hypocrite here because I rarely talk about like women's sports or like basketball or soccer on this podcast, but like we just gotta talk about it more. We gotta follow like the WNBA, the NWSL, like softball like is not a thing. I'm surprised that like women's softball is not more of like a professional sport.
I agree.
But like I think you hit the nail on the head where it's just like we got to get over our biases. Like I know that. So I moved to Connecticut, I think like 2 years ago, and like I went to some pre-COVID. I went to like a women's. No, first I went to a men's UConn basketball game, then I went to a women's UConn basketball game within like 2 weeks, and it's just like the UConn women's game was so much better to watch as like a basketball fan because I felt like they ran almost like a NBA or like a professional offense, and it's because those players are going to be professional and WNBA players. So they're running like double screens, like they're shooting more threes. Like it seemed like the men were just kind of like throwing it into the like low post and just trying to use their big bodies to score. It was very weird to watch. But like these women are great, and I forget who wrote it, but there's an SB Nation article a while ago where like these women when they practice against like former Division I men's athletes. So it's not like they're competing against like some of the best men like in the country, and they're like can beat them, and they really like. I know you said that like physicality isn't a thing, and I feel like oh people they're not gonna dunk, so they're not gonna get the like the short 10-second clip of some sweet dunk or some cool dribbler or whatever. But
Yeah.
like fundamentally they pass really well. Like women centers are obscenely really or just really good at making free throws. It's like they're all like 80% or above in free throw percentage, and it's wild.
No,
I don't know. I feel like we just gotta talk about it more. We gotta acknowledge it. I'll try to do better. especially when
and
they come
it's
back. But
I wholly agree with you. And we all, I mean, even guys who follow women's sports can say like, I don't follow it enough because it's not something you're around. I completely agree with you when it comes to when they practice, and they've talked about it, and there's all kinds of footage of these women who are going against men who are top athletes. And yeah, aside from being able to dunk for most women, they shoot at equal levels or better than the men. You can go find 15 NBA centers that couldn't hit a free throw if their child was dangling over, shark-infested waters. So the fact that these women all know how to shoot, because that's what they do. They don't have to worry about the aspects of dunking. Their post games are amazing. The shooting touches are great. I mean, people talk about like, Stephen Curry being the greatest shooter of all time, which is fine. You should probably go look at Diana Taurasi. Like, she's probably got just as sweet of a stroke. But we won't do that. That's not what we do. Part of it is learning the history of women's sports. It's really easy to look at, again, I'll bring it up, the Olympics. I love the Olympics. If you listen to one of our old pods, I go off on the Olympics. But go watch, I believe HBO did a documentary called The Women of Troy, which talks about like Cynthia Cooper, Cheryl Miller, and these USC women's teams that were, they were UConn before UConn. They were incredible. Go look up players like Cheryl Miller and Nancy Lieberman and find out what they did for women's basketball and basketball in general. And it's not just basketball. It's everything. Like you said, I'm kind of stunned that women's softball hasn't caught on a little bit more, but it is tough. The dimensions of the field are a little bit smaller. There's different aspects of the game. And I think one area where women's sports really lacks nationally is most of the best women's sports are in college. It is women's softball, or it's women's swimming, or track and field and stuff like that. And if you're not close to those universities or you don't follow those college teams, it's really hard to get latched on. I love track and field. I always loved watching the collegiate nationals just because I saw people that I've, of course, never heard of. The Prefontaine Classic, where you had amateurs and professionals, and the U.S. Olympic trials and all this. But we as men, and even women can also not like women's sports. It's not just men. So if there are women listening, please go support, whatever it is. But if there's a sport you like, see if there's a local team around. See if there's a semi-pro team or something, because every one of those people needs support and deserves it. Because I can tell you this, I broke my leg a couple years ago, and shortly after I recovered, I was still struggling, and I played flag football. Now, it sounds dumb, and I'm not trying to compare myself to any professional female athlete, but when I went out there and my family was there, I worked my butt off to show that I number one, could do it, and that I could do it well. And when women go out and play to half-filled stadiums and people online telling them that they're not as good as the men or they should quit or whatever, that's terrible. We talked about Bill's Twitter earlier and how we just like to yell at the wind sometimes. But when you're degrading female athletes, what's the point? If you don't like something, like, I'm not a car guy, but if I like Ford, I'm not tweeting at Chevy and telling them that their trucks suck. Like, I'm sorry, that's just not something that interests me. Like, why would I do that? What is the point of that? So if you're a guy and you see, like, a female or a woman who's, does something great or has a social stance that you agree with or don't agree with, coming back to Maya Moore, and I cannot say enough things about how incredible it is that she helped get this guy out of jail and literally quit in the prime of her career. So give her the Nobel Peace Prize, give her the Arthur Ashe Award, whatever prize you can give her, whatever recognition you can give her, please do it. But just find something better to do. Like, we can't be tearing down people in general, but female athletes do not deserve it. Nobody does. But I can tell you this. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and if she decides to play any sport, and she does dance right now, or if she becomes a dancer, if anybody tells her that she can't do it, then they have to come talk to me. and she doesn't need me to stand up for her, but she damn well deserves it.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like you hit all the major points really, just on that. But yeah, I forgot where I was gonna go. But
Sorry.
no worries. But it was like so. I think also with like minor league stuff, like just like go support that because there's so many minor leagues where it's empty stadiums, either if it's women or men.
Yeah,
And I think
definitely.
also I don't want to like knock on Maya Moore, but I think it was a lot easier for her to leave because she's basically was making no money as a WNBA player, where people basically they had to play overseas to like in the off season.
To supplement their income. No, you're
Yeah,
right. I mean, there
it's
were women who didn't play WNBA seasons because they were making 5 times that playing overseas.
yeah. And then just anyone, just to enlighten anyone, I'll probably get it when the WNBA comes back. WNBA League Pass is like $17 for the whole thing.
Are
Like
you
it
serious?
is literally $17.
Wow.
So it's dirt cheap to watch basically every game if it's not in your home market, if you don't have cable. But like
Wow.
it's it's just do anything to support it. And then just to go back to what Maya Moore did, it's like unprecedented, and I don't think anyone will ever do this. Like you said, she has so much accolades. I think she was a
Yeah.
two-time Naismith Player of the Year. She's you already listed all the other stuff that she has, but like this, it's literally like if Steph Curry. Like, I was thinking more like James Harden, but I guess he hasn't won anything yet. So it really is like
Yeah.
Steph Curry, like LeBron. She's only 31. Uh, and it's just like to go back and to fight for your friend, like a childhood friend, and this took a year. Like this was not easy. Like she
Oh,
needed the time to do this and like dedicate herself to social reform and like learn all the laws and how to like find like loopholes to get him out of there. And it's just I don't know, I just love the little clip where they embrace each other, they're hugging, and it's just like such a relief. And I think it kind of gives hope for people who are supporters of the Black Lives Matter movement or just other kind of political movements that like it can work. It's gonna take a lot of work and it's gonna take a lot of
yeah.
time, but like clearly it can do something.
And
Um,
not only that, there was no guarantee this was going to work.
yeah,
She took this time, like you said. I mean, financially, that's a whole other argument that we could get into, or not. I shouldn't say argument. That's a whole other discussion we could get into. But there was no. I mean, there was light at the end of the tunnel, but she didn't see it when she started, and there was no guarantee that she was going to reach it. So I think that's another part when you talk about this story, not necessarily you personally, Dan, but when we talk about stories like this, that when people take these steps, there is no guarantee of what happens at the end. Same as in life, there's no guarantee. And for her to do this, again, just there's not enough compliments in the world to express how amazing this is, even if it's one person. I go back to living in the Pennsylvania area. I grew up on Fred Rogers, and he had a very famous quote where he talks about when things are happening, look for the helpers. And Maya Moore is the textbook definition of a helper. And I think it is incumbent on everybody that can. And sometimes it's not money. Sometimes it's not time. Sometimes it's a note or a pledge or a march to do something to try and make things better.
yeah, exactly. And that I mean, you make any steps to try to make it better. I think you're just a good person. I don't
Yeah.
know, as simple as that. All right, Maya Moore, awesome. All right, Joe. I think it kind of good end note. So do you want to plug your Out of Bounds podcast? And
I mean,
so,
if you're gonna let me, that's great. I want to thank you, Dan, because this was so much fun. I love my guys. I love Trey. I love Marcus. I love Caleb on the Out of Bounds podcast. But Dan, you are so well put together. You are the adult in the room with me in it. So I am so thankful for this tonight. So I do want to plug my Out of Bounds podcast, our Out of Bounds podcast. Mainly we talk about football, but we've talked about a lot of different sports. We also have an episode on the Tiger King, which is a lot of fun. We had a blast doing that. So we're still growing. We're still trying to get things in place. So check us out online. Facebook, we have a page, Out of Bounds. It's spelled with a Z at the end because we're pretentious douchebags. And like Dan said, you can find us on any podcast platform. We've been really lucky. Trey has worked his butt off to get us out there and trying to build up a brand. We're not quite at Snowflake Sports level yet, but we're climbing the hill. And I appreciate people like Dan for inviting me on and doing this. And again, I had so much fun, and thank you for letting me blabber. And again, don't forget, support podcasts too. We talked about the little guy and the women and all this stuff, but support podcasts too, because a lot of times you guys, we're just doing this for fun, but
Yeah.
we like doing this. A month ago, I didn't know half these people, and now I'm on podcasts, and now I'm talking about the sports that I love and things that I hate and everything else. So support the small podcast too. It's not about money, but give your time, listen, see what you like, see what you don't like, and tell us. I don't know about you, Dan, but it's so hard to get people to actually tell you what they think. Like, hey,
Oh, yeah.
if I give terrible takes, please tell me. Like, hey man, you don't know crap about football. All right, well, study up on football more.
Yeah,
You don't
right.
know the name of a hockey team. All right, well, I'll make sure I get it right next time. Like, do that.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I do also tell my listeners I want to recommend the Tiger King one that they had because it was weird to listen to it with like a couple months in between of watching it because you forgot how much crazy shit went on in that show. It's just like, oh right, like
It was a lot of fun because even like I had notes for that one, which I hardly ever have notes, believe it or not. I just do a lot of this off the top of my head. The Tiger King one was crazy because we would be talking about something and all of a sudden you'd be like, oh, do you remember this? And then everybody else like, oh yeah, that's nuts. That's crazy. And like you said, that was definitely something that we had, a lot of fun with. And that's actually been our biggest one so far. So the Tiger King phenomenon is real. And I keep trying to get the guys. I told them, I said, we need to have a follow-up episode because so much has happened since we did that pod. Which is crazy to think of that even more stuff has happened. I think there was enough. And a quick question before I leave. What were your thoughts on the whole Tiger King thing? Like obviously you watched I almost said the podcast. You obviously watched the show. So what were your thoughts on it?
I thought it so like
I love that you laughed before you say anything.
so okay, my girlfriend was watching it initially and I was like, all right, this is dumb. Like I'm not gonna follow it. I'm not gonna be part of this like cult thing. And then like I was like on my phone or on my computer. She's like 3 episodes in and is like, oh my god, you like need to watch this. This is wild. And then like I watched like an episode. It was like, oh my god, who are these people? These people are crazy. So then like I don't know. I didn't follow the whole thing from where she was, and then I went back and started from the beginning. And it obviously is wildly entertaining. And it's like it was like a 4-year project or whatever. I loved it. I think it was great. I think they're all crazy. They're all terrible people. Like,
Yes.
I feel like if I was on a side, I'd probably defend Carol Baskin, even though she definitely killed her husband. But like, not really, because she didn't pay her employees like at all. It was like hers was because you brought this up on yours, and I don't want to.
No. Please, you're not going to steal anything. We go ahead, please.
But like the cult question you brought up was super interesting because I feel like hers was more of a cult, but you could totally argue like Doc Antle's was more like that.
It
was all the women and like the.
It was like a harem. That's what it was.
Yeah.
It was like a harem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like I said, we had a lot of fun with that. I mean, we obviously got silly and we talked about goofy stuff, but we also got pretty serious in talking about the whole aspect of the cult like thing. And we won't go too long here. I know you got a big move ahead of you, but there is something to be said about like what we all find fascinating. And on the pod, if you listen to it, I talk about like how weird it was that these people want to be around big cats, but like I love penguins. If I went somewhere, like if I went to an animal sanctuary and they were like, hey, for $50 you can hug a penguin, I'd be like, yeah, here's the $50. I want to hug an effing penguin. Like, cool, man. And I wouldn't necessarily think in that moment what that penguin is doing and suffering. Like I would just think, I'm about to get a picture with a damn penguin. Like this is awesome. I'm going to show everybody. So like I get how people get sucked into it, but it is, like you said, they're all terrible people. There's no winners from the Tiger King thing. Which is really the saddest part, because when you see something like that, you hope that something or somebody is triumphant. And when you watch it, like I remember, and I talk about it on the pod, just being more angry the more I watched it, because there was really no redeeming quality or event. Like there wasn't some big twist at the end where like, oh, the tigers were set free in the wild or whatever. It's like, no, like there's still this going on. These people still suck. And like, it's just, I mean, not to be a downer, but like, it was just kind of like that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, all right, I think that concludes Snowflake Sports Pod. Again, I want to thank Joe for coming on. This was a pleasure. Go listen to his pod on Out of Bounds Podcast. If please rate and review this podcast wherever you get it, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever. Follow us on Instagram at Snowflake Sports. You can follow me on Twitter at Lucky Profession. All right, have a good one. Peace.